Hey guys, welcome to Ecclesia number 8. Hello Zeusers, former Zero Chainers. Welcome back. This is our um, final broadcast for this month, and then we will convene again in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure if I can see any messages, so if you guys can chat or let me know if I'm live, that'll be great. All right, so I don't see any messages, so I guess I'm live. Okay, there we go. Okay. Um, what I want to do today is basically kind of talk about. Oh, great. Everybody can see me. So we're live, and what I want to talk about is the process of going to mainnet and how we're achieving it. So maybe what I'll do is kind of walk you through all the issues that we have, which we need to fix, and then go through, how long it's gonna take, or what we anticipate how long it's gonna take, and then talk about the Blimp app, which is our the last app that we're gonna showcase. We're gonna on this AMA, and then what we will do is basically we'll be releasing these apps. So let's go to the backend. I just want to show the browser. Here we go. Okay. So as you can see on this board, we have the total of these are backend issues. So this is about 146 that are open, and then we have a sprint board where 125 is left to be done for the next month. It's currently about 21. Like it's been 10 has been completed. 11 will be completed this week. The main board that we want to focus on is the zero chain board, which is about 60 issues. And we plan to, as you can see, it's going at a rate of about 10 per week. We expect that to increase because there will be more developers that will be coming in from other repos. This is the main repo that needs to be sorted out, and we expect this to be, if it's done at a clip of 10 issues per week, then it's about 6 weeks. So our expectation is that there will be 6 weeks of work left. And this is kind of the poll, because everything else, like the Go SDK repo, which are about 14 issues left, you have 12 issues on Blobber repo. So ZeroBox repo is the one that's a private repo. There's about 28 issues left. And then you have CLI repo, which is public, and then you have the wallet CLI and the Zbox CLI, and of course the system test, that's also public as well. That's about 12 issues. So there are a lot of issues on ZeroBox, which is the private repo. It's mainly for the APIs. Think of ZeroBox as like the Integra of inferior of Ethereum, and that's more API related. So all of these repos would be done fairly quickly compared to the zero chain repo, which is about 60 issues. So that's the main one which needs to be sorted out, and we expect that to be done in 6 weeks. And so when I base the timeline, when I anticipate the timeline, if you're going at a clip of 10 issues per week, then the chances are we should be able to complete within 6 weeks. And then, there's a 2-week buffer where we can do some load test with all the completed issues. The main ones will be completed much before then, but there will be the other non-important or non-critical issues that needs to be done because they're part of mainnet, but it's not as critical. So we expect those to pass load tests. So whenever we complete all these issues, we're continuously running load tests with the new new code on staging. And so we expect that all of it to pass load test. Now, what we'll be doing is that we'll be doing load testing on the active set in parallel, which currently we're waiting on some fixes to be done on the test that we are running internally. There are some bugs that we see, and we don't want to engage the active set unless those bugs are fixed. So we expect that to happen this week, and as I mentioned, we'll be from next week, basically next month, we're going to be running load test on the active set. And if that goes well, we'll be running the apps as well on the active set, and then we will do a right now the active set is about 50 servers. We will basically do another release on the active set, and at that time we will have all the active set together, all the 100 servers, and be able to have the full active set doing load test and then having the apps on it. So that's the plan in February. So a lot of work needs to be done in February. Most of the apps are in close to demo release mode or in demo release already, or will be released this week. So the expectation is that we will release 1 or 2 apps this week, maybe most of them the week after. All right, so that's kind of the preamble, and now what I'd like to do is maybe I'll answer some of the questions that Tiago raised on the AMA before I get into Blimp, because those are the questions that's coming from Tiago based on some of the questions that was raised on the channels. So let me get to them first, and then I'll show Blimp. How's that work? All right. Okay, so the questions okay, so the questions that I have from Tiago is will all the apps be open sourced? So yes, they will all be open sourced eventually. We'll do it. We will basically stage some of them. For instance, the wallet app would be open sourced earlier than the other apps. But in general, we want to open source these apps so that people can see how we have developed an app using decentralized storage. It'll be a kind of a showcase for other apps to copy or follow, or be basically an example for other apps. So absolutely, we want to open source them. Do team servers have a commission? If so, what is the use of that commission, if any, on the team servers? So I don't quite understand the question, but I'm assuming that this is based on the miners and the sharders that the team will have, and we will open this up to the public to stake. We haven't decided on the service fee that we will charge. So that is what is implied by commission, I believe. So we charge, basically we enable basically miners, sharders, blobbers, any provider to charge a service fee, which is a percentage of earnings. And how much we will charge is something we haven't decided yet, and that will be decided probably just prior to mainnet. We'll decide what would be the number, because we want to have a number such that it'll form a basis for other providers. We don't want it to be too low. We don't want it to be obviously too high, but we don't want it to be zero either, because that will not send the right signal to other people who wants to do kind of a similar structure, where they have a server, they have data center, they have space, and all they want to is provide that server and charge for it. That would be the case for blobbers, for instance, because most of the MSPs have spare servers, and they can just plug it in, use Chimney to plug it in to our network and provide storage, and then charge a service fee. How much are they gonna charge? I'm thinking like 10% would be reasonable, but and we actually, the network caps it at a certain percentage. I believe 25% is the maximum you can charge. So we will have that sorted out prior to mainnet. Okay, next question is, can you elaborate on how active set is progressing? Well, we know what the problems are with the active set, and we have fixed them internally. We just haven't updated the code, because if we were to update the code, we'll have to restart from scratch, and we want to do some testing prior to the restart, and some of that will happen next week. And then we also want to test out the apps on the active set, if we can, if you don't have to change the code. If you don't have to restart the active set. So that's what we plan to do before we restart the active set with the full active set group of miners. Okay. Fourth question is, what are we waiting for the go-ahead to perform active set testing? As I mentioned, it's internal load test. There's no point to do load test on active set if internally we see some issues. And as I said, we have fixed some of them. There are one or two issues that we are concerned about, that we want to look at today, and then hopefully can fix it. Can you share a timeline on when we expect the active set testing phases to be performed? Okay, so these are all active set questions. The timeline is, as I mentioned, next week we'll start load testing on active set. And if that works, if all works good, then we will basically have the apps on the active set. Those are the two things that we need to do before we restart the active set with the full number of miners. Is it realistic to give, so the next question is it realistic to give any dates at this point while active set is not rolling, waiting for network redeployment, a lot of open issues, hackathon in mind, apps in development? Wouldn't it be good in the next 2 weeks becomes soon paradigm? So, a lot of people were asking for a timeline, and the way we're doing this, and I think we also published on the weekly the timeline or anticipated timeline, is based on what we know now. What we don't know is we don't know, and what we know now we can project what the timeline is. Now, will the timeline shift later? It could, but it really depends on what we know when we do the testing. But regardless, we should give some sort of indication of what the timeline would be based on what we know today. So that's what we have provided. At least this gives us, at least the community clarity on where we are. It's not like, and we're transparent about it, and you can see it on the repos, the number of issues and how many are closed. The thing is, we expect there will be less issues to be open or new issues to be open, because most of the bugs have been sorted out or uncovered. Sometimes a new issue opens because we haven't uncovered that bug, but the expectation is that we will uncover it. All right, so I think those are the only questions. Oh, last question is, are we still on pace for a launch in March? And the question, the answer is yes. We are on target for 6 weeks, as I mentioned, and so 6 weeks from the end of the month would be middle of March. And so end of March, we expect to launch Mainnet. Now, before we launch Mainnet, let's say 6 weeks from now, we say, okay, everything's ready to go. And then we decide, okay, we want to do some marketing event or big marketing splash before we release the Mainnet. It's possible that we could potentially wait, but that would be a decision at that time based on market conditions or marketing, or let's say we have a hackathon, big hackathon coming up, and we want to wait and have it done prior to releasing the mainnet. So there could be a bunch of events that could come up at that time, and we could make a decision at that time whether to go ahead or not. But all I'm saying is that we will have a mainnet readiness by end of March. I don't know if that gives you clarity. All right, so I think okay, so I think those are the only questions. Now let me move over to talk about Blimp. All right, so let's see. Okay, so let's talk about Blimp, and let me increase this. There we go. Oh, there we go. Okay. I don't know. Oh, I guess it's always a difficult thing. There we go. Okay. Okay, that's better. All right, we'll just play it. Okay, so this is Blimp, which is essentially a decentralized S3 storage. So if you look at AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, they have S3. They have AWS S3. There is Azure, I think they call it something else, but basically it's an S3 storage, which is used for websites, which is used for applications, and basically it's used worldwide for all apps, whether it's a consumer app or enterprise app. So this is a big deal for us. This is a big it's a big app for us, because if this gets used by all the consumer and business apps, and if one makes it successful, think of Dropbox, think of Snapshot. If it makes successful, then it can be a huge deal for Zeus. So here, just to go ahead, I mean, basically we sign in through Firebase OTP, just like any other app. And then, we have, we basically have allocations, and then we get tokens from the wallet. Now, obviously, we're getting the tokens from the faucet here, but in general, we will get the tokens from DEX, from DeFi. And we haven't shown the DeFi aspect of it, but basically we can get that from DeFi. As you can see, there are different use cases for Blimp. Obviously, the number one use case is to back up your data to decentralized storage. Even if you're computing in cloud, let's say I'm computing on AWS, but I want to store the data on decentralized cloud because we want to have better performance, lower read cost, because read cost is very high on AWS. So that's one of the reasons why you want to do. So here, as you can see with OTP, you log into Blimp, it gets the wallet information. So you select the wallet, and then you verify wallet. You get into the allocations. So you can see the different allocations. There are you can create an allocation. So in this case, you're basically creating an allocation here with different data and parity shards. So it's very flexible. You can choose, how many tokens to lock, and you can, as you can see, you can have different blobbers come up based on your preference. You can prefer certain blobbers if you want. So once you do that, you can okay, so you can use Blimp. So I'm gonna pause it a bit before I explain what's going on. So basically you can use Blimp for three things, which is basically this direct storage, which means it's the most flexible storage. You can choose an allocation with a certain data, certain parity, so it gives you total control over how much uptime you want. So let's say I want the best uptime possible, better than AWS, better than anything in the world. Then you can choose the servers you want, where they're located. You can choose your preferred servers, or you can say, okay, I want certain servers of this right price or geo distribution. And then I want certain data and certain parity. So if I want very high uptime, I want more parity. So let's say I choose 3 servers, 3 data shards, and then let's say 4 or 6 parity shards, which means I have total of 9 servers, and all I need is only 3 servers to be available, which gives you a very high uptime at all times. And then I can do different types of storage. So one is direct storage, meaning I'm writing files directly using the using either the SDK or basically this UI to upload files. And then these are the two use cases, the S3 server and cloud migration. So S3 server is the primary use case for this app, in which case you don't have to change any code. You just set up the S3 server and just use it as if you're using a AWS server or a Azure server. So you just use that mode if you want to have no code change. Direct storage is where you need to either use our UI or you use SDK to upload data to the allocation. And then cloud migration is about migrating your existing storage from AWS. Today, right now on this app today, we only have AWS, but we will support other cloud down the road. But initially, we just have cloud migration from AWS S3 to decentralized to Zeus decentralized storage. And this is important because a lot of customers came up to us and asked, how do we migrate from AWS to decentralized storage? We like your product, but we want to do S3 server, but we also want to migrate our old data. So we have provided a workflow and through this app that makes it very simple, and I'll go through it. Okay, so right now we're looking at direct storage where we just, basically this is the files that we have on direct storage we can upload and so forth. Now we're looking at, actually we are still looking at direct storage, I believe, and we are uploading the file on direct storage from the UI, and so we can upload file, and we can create a folder. This is similar to Vult. The only difference here is that you can, as you can see, it's uploading the video. So this is very similar to Vult. The only difference is that the allocation is something that you create and you have control over what type of allocation you want, whereas a Vault is predetermined and is for consumer use case. As you can see from the wallet, the details, you can see your private key. We also have privacy report, GDPR. That's also a feature that's actually going to be coming up. We haven't incorporated it yet, but that's something we have for Blimp. And let's see, I think we will now do the S3 server, I believe. Okay, we can update allocation. We increase the storage size and so forth. And once we go through this update allocation, the DEX tool will come up, which is, it goes through decentralized exchange and converts your Ethereum token into ZCN token. You can also cancel an allocation and you can get refunded. So that's also something we have incorporated. So you can, as you can see, you can refund and everything. So, all right. So I think we're okay. So we're showing the images. As you can see, you can view the images on Blimp. This is something that you cannot do on AWS S3. So we added some qualities of Dropbox into AWS S3 storage. So and it was fairly easy for us to do because that's something we already do with Vault. So it's basically taking some of the Vault features and putting it onto decentralized storage. And it looks like, this is a recording that was done earlier of my AMA, and it's a video you can play back, and the playback is in the stream mode. All right, so now I think we're let me fast forward it a little bit because I believe we are a little bit out of oops, let me see if I can get control with this. Okay, so this is just okay, so here, okay, so I think we're wallet, let's see. All right, okay, so yeah, I mean, basically you cannot download the wallet. You cannot see the wallet because we hide it, and you can only download it to your server, to your computer. And then okay, now I think we're gonna talk about S3 storage now. Let's see. Yeah, so we're setting up S3, as you can see. It's setting up S3, so we choose S3, and now we go through the workflow of setting up the S3. So one of the workflow is that the key part of the workflow is that we want you to have control over the keys. So we pre-fill some of the aspects like allocation and so forth, and then we generate a script. And this is the script that you need to copy and run it on your terminal. And this is the terminal of the server that you set up on AWS. So you SSH into it. As you can see, you're SSHing into it. And then you run the script. So basically we prepared the script based on what the information you gave us. And this is and basically the IP address and things like that. And so as you can see, the script pulls in the repository and runs it on the server to set up the S3. Now you say, okay, I have ran the script, and then what happens is that it looks at, so it basically looks at the server, pulls in the data from the server, and populates it. And you can see this working here at the bottom right, and you can see it's populated. Now you can see the gateway port number, you can see the log search API, So this is, and you can see that there are type of requests now that you can do, like list buckets or put object. So yeah, so for instance, if you want to put object where basically and you put it in a bucket. So now you're executing an S3 command. So now what I'm doing here, this is, by the way, a demonstration of how it works from the UI. Obviously, an enterprise will do this with the code where they will write to S3 server. So these put object will be essentially a code that they already have and they're writing to this bucket. But we're showing how it's done to the UI so you can test it for yourself, right? And this is what all the IT folks will do. Basically, they will test it out and see if it works. So you can see that I can now create bucket. I can put an object in the bucket and be able to make these curl requests. So you can see when you do a curl, it basically goes to the server, goes to your server, and basically executes that action, which is uploading that file, and then it gets automatically uploaded to the decentralized storage allocation, which is pretty cool. So here you are essentially doing an S3, executing an S3 command, and you can see from the logs that these are the S3 logs. As you can see, these are the S3 logs of putting object. All these objects have been put, and you can view the details and see that, okay, I have I have put this object there. If there's an error, then it will show if there's an error and so forth, right? Okay, so now we're going to talk about the migration. So you can see I can do AWS migration. Today only AWS migration is available. And we have the API keys where you're going to basically migrate the data from. So I have an S3 server, S3 bucket on AWS, and I'm migrating it. So this is the script. You generate the script. You basically run it on the terminal. Again, we do this way because we don't want access to your key, and so that's why we want this to we want you to run the script. That way, we don't have access to the keys, but we make the process very simple. And so it says, okay, I have ran the script, and as you can see, it's kind of waiting. On the right bottom side, you will see this loading indicator, and you can see that, okay, now I can pull in the data that now I'm migrating the data. You see this, now it's migrated, 100% migrated, and you can visualize all of that. And you can run migration again if you have uploaded new files, so it will automatically sort that out. And then you can see these files on the home page. So if you were to select any of these locations, allocations like S3, Cloud, or whatever, you can see on the home page, where the files are. So if you were to click on the home page, you can see. Well, in this case, I think you can upload file as well. Yeah, so you can upload file, but you can see some of the other files that are appearing. They're basically that was there before. Okay, and you can view the files and so forth. So, the main and you can download file as well. So it's basically think of Vult. It's basically think of Dropbox and S3 storage, Minio S3 storage. We kind of put it together and made it into a nice user interface where you can set up a server without us having any access keys. It's a workflow that makes it very simple for you to set up a S3 server, a cloud migration server, and even a direct storage server. Or a direct storage allocation, and be able to send data using S3 commands, and be able to view them on the dashboard, as well as be able to pull in the data and upload directly from the dashboard. So it's a very nice feature we have on Blimp. The main application is, as I said, as an S3 server, so that you don't have to. It's basically a no-code change for any of the Web 2 companies to migrate or to use decentralized storage or become Web 3. So let me kind of go through the conclusion of this Blimp. Who will use Blimp and why it's so powerful? It's basically for all enterprises. Now, if you look at all Web3 company, it's kind of difficult to transition from Web2 to Web3 because you gotta do smart contracts, you gotta write a lot of code, you gotta deal with Ethereum or Polygon or what have you. But in our case, the transition from Web2 to Web3 is seamless. You don't have to do any coding to first participate on the network. Second, to send any data to be part of decentralized storage. So that's very powerful. I think we have two very powerful tools. Chimney is a very powerful tool for anyone to provide storage and have a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid cloud strategy. If you look at in the old days, well, it's still been talked about, but hybrid cloud and multi-cloud has been talked about for almost a decade or more, 2 decades, right? Why do people want hybrid cloud or multi-cloud? Because of uptime. They want control over their uptime. They want control over their data to make sure that if AWS goes down or any server goes down, they still have data in their local servers. That's one. The other is performance. AWS is not as performant, especially at the edges, because their data centers are far out. They're not within metro cities. So those are the two reasons why hybrid cloud exists, which is a combination of private and traditional cloud, public cloud, and multi-cloud exists because of uptime and resilience and disaster recovery. So Blimp makes it basically the multi-cloud hybrid cloud strategy come alive. And it's kind of a dream for IT managers because you don't need a big IT team to now have a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid cloud strategy. Otherwise, it's a nightmare to handle it and manage it. So now with the Blimp tool, it becomes very easy for enterprises to migrate and not worry about how they do the migration. It's all about in the setup, how they set up the allocation. Do they want certain servers in a particular geo? Do they want no censorship jurisdictions where they can populate the servers? So these are the choices they can make, and they can also decide on how many servers they want. And how many parity servers do they want? Do they want high reliability, or do they want distribution like CDN, which is today if you look at AWS and other companies, they use either CloudFront or they use Cloudflare. These are two big CDN, and of course they use underneath the hood, they use Akamai and so forth. So the choices are: do I want to do that, or should I use decentralized storage? We can still do the compute in the cloud, but then get the data out of the cloud and put it in decentralized storage, where you have a high resilience, 100% uptime. You can now achieve 100% uptime. You have zero loss of business continuity, which means zero loss of business revenue, because if your website, especially for e-commerce, if your website goes down, you're basically losing money. And this has happened, there have been crashes during Christmas shopping, and when you have these spikes that come up, they're hard to pull the images or pull data from, and especially nowadays, if you look at e-commerce and so forth, they're very high resolution images. There's also videos, so it's hard to pull data and serve it if you don't have this sort of resilient infrastructure. So by making things more available is something that businesses would like. So that's one of the most important things that we have done for having Blimp be a conduit for people to now achieve 100% uptime with decentralized storage. And this is without any code change, so they can do it today. Right after mainnet release, they can do it. Secondly, with Chimney is now enterprises can actually have their own servers use Chimney to have a multi-cloud strategy, because they don't need to have their own private cloud. They don't need to have a separate IT team manage their private cloud, because they can just use Chimney and do it. So I think these are and our BD target is business development target is MSPs and enterprises, and basically educating them about how they can use Chimney and Blimp for a multi-cloud strategy. So I think it's very powerful, these two software tools, and I hope big things can happen. Obviously, I mean, the process of selling to enterprises and MSPs is that first you crawl, with Blimp and Chimney, because there's no code involved. And then you start to walk with SDK, which we have tools, and we will have, multiple hackathons showing how you can use SDK on your website or on your app, transform those apps into decentralized storage. And then you start to run, then you can incorporate Bolt and Vult within your corporate structure, because Bolt is something that you can use to incentivize people by giving them tokens. Vult is something that all enterprises should do. They should allow their employees to have their own personal space, personal cloud. So we're very excited about these apps, and hoping to release them next week or even this week, depending on if it's ready. And they will be released on the demo network, demo.zeus.network. And so look at the announcement. There should be announcements coming soon, probably, as I said, as early as end of this week or next week, when we start releasing these apps for community to play around with, and hopefully we'll get some feedback from the community. Most of the obviously will get feedback on the features, but hopefully all the bugs are taken care of, because we have already tested these web apps completely, and then we will also release iOS and Android versions of this apps for Bolt and for Vult. For all the other apps, it'll be basically web app. All right, so let me, I think I'm done with my the Blimp session. Now what I want to do is, if there is any other questions, I'll answer them. Looks like there are some, looks like there's some questions from Mr. Yabbles. Glad to see you can geo-restrict where you store data. That's really important in Europe. Having enough capacity in specific regions is important for adoption. Absolutely. I mean, we're basically one of the reasons we are doing Blimp and having such a customized way you can set up your storage is for that specific purpose, where you can have data localization. You can have control over your data, where your data is stored. There's also a Schrems 2 ruling in Europe, as you know, and then for GDPR as well. So we are very cognizant of that market space, and we are a good fit for that market. Question from Harry Potter fan. How is the blockchain and other apps tested? Manual test or something more industry practice like automated in Jenkins? Yes, we are doing manual testing, obviously, for all the apps, but they will all have Cypress testing for the web apps, and which are all automated. And for iOS and Android, we have different test platforms for those individual apps. And for Vult, we also have testing for Mac and Windows, and these are all automated. We obviously you do manual testing first and develop those test cases to be automated, so it's kind of they kind of go hand in hand. Okay, question. Lots of startups pushing deadlines instead of testing, and there have been delays, which is why I ask. Yeah, we take testing very seriously. We do unit testing, system testing, load testing, Byzantine testing, chaos testing, DDoS testing, and then of course on the app side we also we do Cypress testing. So we write a lot more on the test code than we write on the actual code. And generally that's the way it is for good development practice. That's what you want to do. Obviously we cannot have 100% coverage. I mean, this is something that we desire, but we usually have very high coverage for all our smart contracts and our backend. Okay, question from Irfana. Being someone who has experienced something similar, making translations for S3 storage, it's a huge win that you can curl the APIs without any coding experience and make it so easy. Well, thank you. Yes, we try to make it very simple. Even if you're using terminal, we want to make sure that even a novice can use a terminal and not worry about it. And that's something we have done. Tiago, can you give more details about the one private repo you mentioned before? So the one private repo we mentioned is a repo that's similar to Infura. If you look at Ethereum, they have Infura to basically communicate with clients on APIs. And it's done so that you don't want to barrage, you don't want to DDoS essentially the chain. You want all the requests to come in, and some of the difficult data like stats data are collected through ZeroBox and presented, say on Atlas or on Chimney. For instance, data on how much storage there is, or what the price is, or what the rewards are. Historical, most of it is historical data. We generally on the blockchain we don't provide that support because it's too expensive and difficult to do on a decentralized platform. So similar to Infura, it's basically, think of it as Infura like server that we process these requests. Okay, last question. Any plans to have code audited by third-party companies? Yeah, I mean, we are obviously, we want to have the smart contracts and our blockchain audited, but that's something that we will do after we release the mainnet. That's not something we will do today, because we just don't have time, and it's not ready yet. I mean, if you look at all our testing, and what they will do is essentially look at our tests, look at our unit tests, system tests, Byzantine tests, and so forth, and they will audit it, and they will run their own tests, and they will see if we have basically coverage. And that's something we can do post mainnet. I don't think it's a priority for us. In any case, we're doing more testing than any other external party will do, but it's more for publicity, more for marketing appearance, that and to reassure other people that other people have taken a look at the code and look at our testing process, and have basically get their blessing that it is all good. that will it, but it won't. It doesn't mean that it'll be bulletproof because they have approved it. It's our responsibility to make sure it's bulletproof because we have to, because we, it's our reputation online, right? So we're gonna do a lot more rigorous testing than any external parties will ever do. Couple of questions from the community. When will this app be released for us to test and use? As I mentioned, all of these apps are coming out either next week or week after, and one may come out this week. So we will announce it as it happens. Question: how much data in Zeus is your end of year goal? We don't have a goal. We have a goal in terms of how many people we want to use our platform, but we don't have a goal on how much data they want to put. I think that will happen automatically. It will be kind of a growth whenever people feel comfortable. They will use the platform. Now we have our own product, which is Vult, and we'll see how many users we have and how many users will upload their data on Vult. So that's something we'll have to wait and see. Again, we don't have a target. All right, I think that's all the questions for today. Thank you very much for joining. Next AMA will be in 2 weeks, and we will disclose our Zeus character, which I think you will love. Marketing team has worked on it, and I think they've done an excellent job on the character. So I'm really excited to disclose it. And we can also talk about, the swags and artifacts that we can have you guys buy from the store. We have partnered with one of the stores that enable us to do logos and the character on coffee mugs and sweatshirts and t-shirts and so forth. So we'll have that sorted out and present the next AMA. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.